The Arizona sun sank low, tinting the October sky with shades of copper and crimson. A dry breeze swept across the desert, carrying the pungent scent of creosote and sand. Elias Whitaker stood motionless at the edge of a new grave, the freshly turned earth darker than the sparse grass around it. His grandfather lay beneath that soil, and with him went the heart of the Whitaker legacy. At 20, Elias was too young to carry the weight of a homestead. Yet here he was, steward of 900 unyielding acres. The land stretched vast in every direction, broken only by rusted wire fences and cattle. That seemed to watch him with the same doubt mirrored in the townsfolk as eyes. His boots scraped the dirt as he turned toward the homestead, each step laden with a duty he hadn't saw it. The Whitaker house, built by his grandfather, as hands, stood solid but worn against the boundless sky. Its roof tiles buckled with age, its walls chipped and sun-bleached. Beyond it tilted the stable, slanting westward as if the desert winds had been winning a silent battle for years. Elias' chest ached with a mix of pride and dread. This was his inheritance, his trial, his crucible. "Kid, you ain't got the medal for it." Caleb Turner. His voice cut through the breeze from a passing cart. Turner, burly and grim-faced, slowed his horse just long enough to ensure Elias heard every word. "Give it 6 months. That land'll be for sale. Bet on it, Elias." His jaw tightened. His grandfather always said the desert tested men with silence and storms, not empty talk. Still, Turner, as words stuck like thorns under his skin. He pressed on, refusing to respond, but the doubt clung to him like dust. The stable door creaked as Elias pushed it open. Mules stirred in their stalls, the familiar smell of straw and musk filling the air. This place should be offered comfort, but it only echoed his grandfather's absence. He knelt by the water trough, catching his reflection. His grandfather had been a towering figure, a man who filled every space. Elias saw only a lean frame, eyes uncertain, shoulders bearing more than they were built for. "You were him, aren't you, the Whitaker lad?" The voice startled him. He turned toward the entrance. A woman stood framed in the fading light. She wore a gray wool shawl, travel-worn and dusty. As she stepped closer, the light revealed her features. Auburn hair tucked beneath a cap, eyes blue as river glass, sharp but weary, the kind that spoke of years beyond her age. "Yes, ma, am Elias Whitaker," he said, standing taller, trying to sound like a man, not a youth lost in grief. "Can I help you? I am Mrs. Abigail Morrow." Her voice carried the faint weariness of the trail, steady, tired, but firm. "I've come far, and I need a place to rest tonight. Just a corner of your stable will do. I can pay." Elias shifted uneasy, a widow likely traveling alone. That was no small risk in these parts, yet it was proper to let her stay. "There is a lodging house in town, ma'am. Mrs. Carver runs it. I just came from town." Her tone hardened. Miss Carver made it clear her room's air and tea for women of uncertain standing. The words landed heavy between them. Elias had heard such talk. Widows forced to survive however they could, living on the edge of respectability. His mother would have turned her away without hesitation, but his grandfather always said a man's worth was measured by the mercy he showed those in need. "This stable is warm enough," Elias said at last. "There's fresh straw in the loft. I'll fetch blankets." For a moment, something flickered in her eyes, gratitude, perhaps, or surprise. "You were kinder than most, Mr. Whitaker." As he gathered blankets from the house, a voice in his head mocked him in Caleb Turner as drawl. "Fool kid, letting a stranger under your roof." His grandfather would caution him too, but when he returned, Mrs. Morrow had already made a neat bed of straw with quiet efficiency. "I'll bring you food," Elias offered. "No need to trouble yourself further," she replied, though her eyes softened when he returned with cornbread, jerky, and a flask. "You knew my grandfather?" he asked, handing her the meal. "Only by name," she said softly. "They say he was just, even with those most ignored." Her blue eyes studied him. "I wonder if the grandson carries his strength." The words hit Elias like an empty ache. "I reckon we'll find out." That night Elias sat at the kitchen table, staring at ledgers he barely understood. Debts, heard counts, wages he could pay. The numbers blurred until his eyes burned. Still, his thoughts drifted to the stable and the stranger inside. Sleep came fitful. His grandfather appeared in his dreams, not the towering man he remembered, but a pale shadow whispering, "It's not the land that'll test you, boy. It's It's the choices you make on it. Elias woke to hoofbeats, not his own mules but riders approaching. At dawn he stepped onto the porch. Caleb Turner and his 2 sons sat their horses like coyotes circling a calf, their faces wearing false grins. "Morning," Elias Turner drawled, tipping his hat. "Heard you had a guest last night." Elias kept his face steady. "Ain't your concern, Mr. Turner. Everything's everyone's concern out here." Turner leaned forward, eyes narrowing. "Your grandfather knew that. Understood keeping things proper, harboring drifters and women of dubious character that shows poor judgment. You rode onto my land uninvited." Elias shot back. "That shows poor judgment." Turner's face darkened, but he turned his horse with a smirk. "You or young boy. Young men make mistakes. But mistakes out here, they cost you. Remember that." They rode off in a swirl of dust. Elias, his heart pounded as he stood on the porch. He'd just made an enemy of the most powerful rancher in the region, all for a stranger. When he turned, Mrs. Morrow stood in the stable doorway, her posture straight, her face unreadable, but her eyes showed she'd heard every word. "I'll leave," she said. "I've caused you enough trouble." Elias shook his head. "The day I let Caleb Turner decide who I shelter is the day I dawn. T deserved this land." For the first time, she gave a faint smile. "5 nights," she said softly. "Give me 5 nights. Shelter, Mr. Whitaker, and I'll earn my keep. Cooking, mending, whatever you need. After that, I'll go." Elias knew he should refuse, but something in her gaze, pride laced with desperation, made the choice for him. "5 nights, then," he said. And in that moment, though he did yet know it, Elias Whitaker had set a story in motion that would change everything. The first day with Mrs. Abigail Morrow passed in a blur of work. Elias threw himself into homestead chores, mending fences, checking water tanks, driving cattle to the creek. Yet his thoughts kept drifting to the house, where she moved with quiet confidence. By dusk, he found himself glancing at the windows more than the herd. Inside, the homestead felt alive in a way it hadn't since his grandfather's passing. The scent of coffee, beans, and fresh cornbread filled the kitchen, aromas absent for months. Abigail worked with practiced ease, sleeves rolled, hair tied back as if she belonged. "You'll ruin me for cooking," Elias said, masking his gratitude as he tasted a proper meal for the first time in weeks. "Doubtful," Abigail replied with a small smile, "but a man running a homestead needs real food." Her tone was matter-of-fact, but the warmth behind it stirred him. That evening, storm clouds rolled in from the mountains. By dusk, the first thunderclap shook the house, rattling the windows. Elias glanced toward the stable, uneasy. "The roof leaks," Abigail said, meeting his eyes. "I noticed last night. I wouldn't stay there in this weather." He hesitated. A proper man would insist she go to town, find lodging elsewhere, but sending her into lightning and rain felt wrong, almost cruel. "There's a small room upstairs," Elias said at last. "My mother's knitting room. It is dry. You can use it tonight." Abigail's eyes held his a moment longer than needed, something unspoken passing between them. Then she nodded, practical. As the storm broke, she settled into the room, and Elias paced the hall restless. The thunder shook the beams. Lightning slashed the night, and through it all he kept hearing her voice, steady yet fragile. Near midnight, a cry cut through the storm. Elias was at her door in seconds. Abigail sat upright on the narrow bed, a blanket clutched to her chest, her face pale in the lightning's glow. "Yes, just the storm," she said, though her voice trembled. "When James died, it was a storm like this. Every thunderclap feels like the door splintering again." Without thinking, Elias crossed the room and sat beside her. "You're safe here. I won't let anyone harm you." Her laugh was shaky, broken. "You don't know what men like that can do." "Then tell me," Elias urged. Her blue eyes glistened in the lamplight. 3 men came for James's debts. They killed him in front of me. One tried to take me, and her voice faltered. "I found James's revolver in the bureau. I shot him. The others fled, but I still see his face when the thunder rolls." Elias, his heart clenched. He should have stepped back, kept his distance. Instead, he took her hand. "You did what you had to." "Did I?" Her voice was a whisper, heavy with guilt and sorrow. He squeezed her hand. "Yes, you survived. That's what counts." Her eyes softened. She raised her free hand and touched his cheek. The gesture was tender, yet it carried something deeper, a connection never felt. Lightning lit the room, casting her face in silver. Elias, as breath caught, she looked weary, fragile, but fierce, a woman who learned to endure when the word offered no mercy. Abigail, he whispered, her name slipping out like a secret. If you were older, she murmured, her thumb grazing his skin, you'd know better than to want this, and if I were younger I might not care about the cost. I am old enough, Elias said, his voice sharp with defiance, old enough to run this homestead, old enough to stand against men like Turner, old enough to know what I feel. She gave a rueful smile, sad and wise. Then prove it by living long enough to see tomorrow. The thunder rolled again, but Elias did flinch. He sat with her through the storm, their hands clasped, their words sparse, though nothing more passed between them that night. When dawn broke clear and bright, Elias knew the storm had changed him. He was no longer the boy chasing his grandfather's shadow. He was a man standing beside a woman who carried shadows of her own. For the first time since his grandfather, as burial, Elias felt not just the weight of the land, but the spark of something worth defending. The morning after the storm brought a deceptive calm. The sky stretched blue over the desert, but Elias felt tension in his bones. Trouble one's gone, it was circling. By midday, riders came thundering into view. Caleb Turner led them, the sheriff at his side, and a dozen men trailing behind. They rode hard and stopped at Elias, as porch in a line that felt more like a posse than neighbors. Morning, kid, Turner drawled, his tone void of warmth. Word out your guest has a history worth hearing. Sheriff Harlan, eyes met Elias, tired, steady. Is Mrs. Abigail Morrow inside? Before Elias could answer, the door opened. Abigail stepped out, her shawl neat, her auburn hair pinned, her face calm though her hands trembled. I am Abigail Morrow, she said. What do you want, Sheriff? Talk from Nevada, Harlan said carefully. A man named Amos Reddick was shot dead. His kin say it was self-defense. They're demanding answers. Elias, gut twisted, but Abigail's voice stayed steady. Amos Reddick broke into my home after killing my husband. He tried to take me. I defended myself. A judge cleared me. Turner. Smile turned vicious. So you admit to leaving bodies behind? Fits the rumors. Elias stepped forward. That is enough, Turner. You've no right. No right? Turner barked a laugh. I've every right when a boy's foolish choices threaten the whole region. You are sheltering a killer, and soon the law or worse will come for us all. The sheriff raised a hand. Enough. She's not under arrest. Not unless new evidence comes up. But Turner wasn't done. Evidence or not, your homestead is failing, kid. You've got a loan due in 5 days. When you miss it, the bank'll turn to me. This land'll be mine. All because you can tell kindness from stupidity. Rage surged in Elias' chest, but before he could speak, Abigail's hand touched his arm. Her voice cut through, quiet but firm. I'll stay 3 more days, Sheriff. That is my deal with Mr. Whitaker. Then I'll leave. Turner sneered. Plenty of time for trouble to find you. He wheeled his horse, his men thundering after him. The silence left behind was thick. Elias' shoulders felt like stone, but when he turned, Abigail's eyes met his with unwavering resolve. You should let me go, she whispered, before Turner takes everything. And let him decide who I shelter? Elias shook his head. No, I made my choice the night I let you in the stable. That evening with the storm's echo still in their bones. They sat in the lamplight. Elias watched her fingers twist the edge of her shawl, her eyes distant. Finally she looked up. You'll lose everything because of me, she said. Maybe, Elias admitted, or maybe I found something worth more than land or cattle. For the first time since her arrival, Abigail's eyes glistened with tears. She did speak, but her hand found his across the table, their fingers entwined. Fragile yet strong. The days that followed blurred with labor and unease. Elias fought to keep the homestead running, but trouble drew closer. Riders lingered on the horizon. Whispers spread in town. Reddick's kin wanted vengeance. Turner wanted the land. The bank wanted its payment. On the 5th morning, trouble arrived. The sun rose red as blood, staining the desert in warning. Hoofbeats roared from 2 directions. Turner, as men from the west, Reddick, as gang from the east. Dust clouds swelled as they closed in, both sides hungry for blood. Elias and Abigail stood on the porch, rifles ready. The stable behind them still smelled of damp straw from the storm. The air felt heavy with fate. "Stay inside," Elias urged. "No," Abigail said, steadying her revolver. "Not this time." The two sides collided in a storm of gunfire. Bullets tore through the air. Men fell into the dirt. Mules screamed. The Whitaker house shuddered with the chaos. Elias fired from the window until his shoulder throbbed. Abigail, as precise shots dropped a rider who ventured too close. Through the mayhem, Elias saw Turner circling wide, his pistol raised, murder in his eyes. He lunged for Abigail, but before he could fire, a shotgun roared. Sheriff Harlan S. Scattergun knocked Turner from his horse, ending his threat for good. The battle raged until lawmen from town arrived, scattering the rest. Reddick's gang lay dead or shackled. Turner's men fled, their leader gone. Silence fell over the scarred yard. Elias lowered his rifle, chest heaving. Abigail leaned against him, suit and tears streaking her face. Around them, the homestead lay, battered stable burned, fences broken, bodies strewn across the desert. "It is gone," Elias whispered. "Everything grandfather built." Abigail turned his face to hers, her eyes fierce despite the tears. "Not everything. You have me. As long as we stand together, we can rebuild." Elias pulled her close, the truth settling deep. His grandfather was right. The land won's the test. The choices made upon it were. And today he chosen love. As the sun set on that fifth night, casting the horizon in fire and dust, Elias and Abigail Whitaker stood hand in hand amid the wreckage. Their future was uncertain, but one thing was sure. Whatever came, they'd face it together. 5 nights had passed, and though rest was scarce, something stronger had taken its place. Love forged in fire, unyielding and eternal. If this tale of courage and heart stirred you, please give it a like and subscribe to hear more stories of grit and grace from the wild frontier. Your support keeps these tales alive, just like Elias and Abigail's unbreakable spirit.